All right, Mesechta Rosh Hashanah, as the name suggests, the tractate of Rosh Hashanah is about the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, but also in the beginning of the Mesechta deals with the other Rosh Hashanahs. There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs during the year. The first Mishnah tells us, Arba Rosh Shanim Haim. There are 4 heads of the year, 4 beginnings of the year for 4 different beginnings. Be'echad b'Nisan, the beginning, the first of Nisan, and that's one. Echad be'Elul, and Echad be'Tishrei, and Echad the first of Tishrei, the first of Elul, the first of Nisan, and also the Rosh Hashanah Leilanos, which is machlokas between Beis Sham and Beis Hillel, whether or not it's the first of Shvat or Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat. But that's not what we're going to focus on tonight. What I'd like to focus on tonight is the end of the Mesechta, which deals with the holiday of Rosh Hashanah itself and the mitzvah to blow shofar, which we know is one of the highlights on Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah on Daf, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah on Daf Chav Ches Amun Aleph brings the following question. Take a look at this question over here. The Gemara says, Shalchulei la'avua de Shmuel. They sent the following question to Avua de Shmuel. Kafu va'achol matzah yatza. They sent to Avua de Shmuel that if someone forces me to eat matzah, we'll get to why we're talking about matzah in a second. We're going to get to shofar soon. But if someone forces me to eat matzah on Pesach, Rashi, says that we're talking about a scenario where it's Pesach over here. It's the first night of Pesach. There's a mitzvah for me to eat matzah, and someone force feeds me the matzah. So says Avua de Shmuel, you are yotze. You have fulfilled your obligation, fulfilled the mitzvah of eating matzah. Kafu man. So first, the Gemara has to deal with, well, what's the scenario over here? What does it mean that the fellow was forced to eat matzah? So the Gemara tells us, Ilema kafu shade, if we're talking about that he was possessed, meaning that he became deranged, and his deranged behavior caused him to eat matzah, meaning that it's the first night of Pesach, no one is forcing him to eat it, but rather there's something internal that's forcing him to eat it. Okay, that basically he goes deranged and he starts eating all the matzah. So if we're talking about that, so the Gemara says, Vahatanya, no, what do you mean? We learned in the Brisa, Itim chalim, itim shota, that there are times where you can feel, bari, you could feel good, and times where it's like, God forbid, a person can become a shota, where they can become deranged. Kishuhu chalim, when the person is healthy, harehu kipikeach l'chol dvarav. So during the time where he's healthy, so then he would fulfill mitzvos, and those mitzvos would register because he had the proper wherewithal in understanding what he was doing. However, kishuhu shota, during a time, we're talking about like someone who, God forbid, is schizophrenic, where he's having an episode, or let's say someone who's manic, and they're having a manic episode, and something that causes them to act deranged. So during that time, the mitzvah that they did not register. Hari kishota l'chol dvarav.
Rabbi,
yeah.
let's say you got sick and you take this medicine, and this medicine only allows you to eat dry foods such as crackers and matzah, and you go to the store, and it's a Jewish store, so they got rid of all the crackers, so all you can eat is matzah. And so you've been eating matzah for like the last week, and it's Pesach now, and you're eating matzah, but you have no idea it's Pesach or anything.
Oh, very good question. We're going to get to that. We're going to get the Chai Adam, Rav Avram Danzig, deals with your question, but we'll get to that soon. Okay, keep it in mind. Amar Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi says, no. What's the scenario we're talking about over here, where Avua de Shmuel says that if you were forced to eat matzah, and matzah was force fed to you, that you have fulfilled your mitzvah? Shekafu parsayim, that Persian Gentiles force fed you the matzah. That's the scenario Rav Ashi came up with. It doesn't have to only be Persians. But we're talking about a scenario where someone force-fed it to you, that someone was stuffing the matzah down your throat. They forced you to eat it. So in that scenario, the Gemara says you have fulfilled your obligation of eating matzah, even though it was force-fed to you. So Rava makes the jump from here to say, now we're getting back to shofar. Amar Rava, Rava says, Zoso Maris, this comes to teach me, Hatokea Lashir, that if someone is playing the shofar, not blowing the shofar for the mitzvah to blow shofar, but they're playing the shofar. As Rashi says, Lishorer ulizamer, simply as a musical instrument. They're just blowing the shofar like that. So in such a scenario, Yatza, you fulfilled your obligation, according to Rava. So says the Gemara, Shita. Okay, obviously, right? What would be the difference between being force-fed matzah and playing the shofar? Either way, you're fulfilling your mitzvah in kind of a forced type of a way. You heard the shofar, even though it was, being, or you blew the shofar, even though it was being done, for ulterior motives, and the matzah was being force-fed to you. Basically, you have ulterior motives while you're eating the matzah. You're eating the matzah because you don't want to be killed, right? So pshita, obviously, if you're going to fulfill your mitzvah for one, you're going to fulfill your mitzvah in the other scenario also. So says the Gemara, no, the havamina is that hasam ochel matzah, in the scenario where you're eating matzah, Amar Rahmana, the Torah says, echol matzah, you have to eat matzah, meaning you're physically eating it, and therefore, who cares you're being forced to eat it? You're physically eating it, and therefore, Amar Rahmana, the Torah, that's all the Torah says, and therefore, v'ha'achal, and since you ate it, so you have fulfilled your mitzvah. However, aval hacha, however, in the case with the shofar, zichron trua ksiv. The Torah says it needs to be a zichron trua, meaning that the shofar needs to be remembered, meaning that it needs to be done in a way where it's going to stick to you that you're actually doing the mitzvah of blowing shofar. V'hai misasik ba'alma, and here you're just simply, blowing it for music. Hakamash malan. This comes to teach me that no, even though you're just simply playing music, you still can fulfill your mitzvah according to Rava. Kamash Malon, Rashi says, the avagav de misasek, even though he's just, simply, doing it without having intention to fulfill the mitzvah, who yatsa, he fulfills his mitzvah. Why? Because the mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana. Because according to Rava, mitzvos in general do not require kavana. You don't need to be focused on the mitzvah you're doing. As long as you're physically doing it, you fulfill your mitzvah. Mitzvahs ein tzrichos kavana. This sugya of mitzvahs ein tzrichos kavana comes up a number of places in Shas. It comes up in Mesechta Brachos on Daf Yud Gimel. It comes up in Mesechta Psachim on Daf Kuf Yud Dalet and Kuf Tesvav. It comes up in a number of different places. Rosh Hashanah, Chav Chasam Beis. It comes up in a number of different places. This is a Shas topic of mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana, or mitzvos tzrichos kavana. That when I do a mitzvah, do I need to know what I'm doing, or do I not need to know what I'm doing? This is the opinion of Rava is that no, it's not necessary for me to have kavana. However, there's another opinion. This is the opinion of Rabbi Zera. Amar le Rabbi Zera lishmayel. The Rabbi Zera said to his student, yeah.
Your voice is. I don't know what happens. Every now and then, it just you stop. Your mic is blocked or something.
Is it good now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's another opinion. This is the opinion of Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera is quoted at the bottom on Chav Ches Amud Beis, going on the Chav Tes Amud Aleph. Rabbi Zera says the following: Echavein v'take li. He says to his assistant that blow the shofar and have me in mind. You have to have kavana for me. Alma kasavar. Therefore, we see that Rabbi Zera holds. Mashmei by kavana.
I hear you.
Can you hear me now? You can't hear me.
I can barely hear you. I don't know what happened. I don't know if your hands in front of the mic or something. There we go.
Hello? Yeah?
Perfect.
Okay. Let's keep my hands over here. So Rabbi Zera's opinion is, from the fact that he told his assistant to have me in mind while you blow shofar, we see from there that He holds mitzvos, tzrichas kavana, that you need to have kavana, you need to know what you're doing when you fulfill your mitzvah. So this is the machlokes that comes up, like I mentioned, a number of places of Shas, between Rava and Rabbi Zera, whether or not mitzvos require kavana. Rava says no, Rabbi Zera says yes, mitzvos require kavana. So now, Elon Daniel asked me before, he says, hold on, let's say on Pesach a guy is just eating matzah. Shay is just eating matzah. He goes to the store. It's his favorite time of year is Nisan, because the shelves are stocked with matzah. Matzah is his favorite food, and he doesn't even realize it's Pesach. It just happens to be that, for some reason, always during April, my favorite food hits the shelf. And there's such a person who's eating matzah in that type of a way fulfill his mitzvah. So, I'd like to reframe that question a little bit differently. We're basically, when I say mitzvahs trichas kavana, there are basically three cases. This is what the Chai Adam says. There are three cases I could be talking about. Either I could be saying that a person is a tzaddik, that they have complete kavana. Like let's use the example of lighting Hanukkah candles, okay? That you have the Rebbe who's standing there holding the shamish, and he's Baruch Ato Hashem, right? He's the kavana of lighting Hanukkah candles, and then he's about to light the first candle, but as right before he's about to do it, his mind for just a second goes, to somewhere else. He goes off to, oh shoot, I need to, help such and such person out. Right? He has totally good kavanas. He doesn't go off thinking about sports or thinking about what he's doing in the summer. His mind goes to other things, important things, but for half a second he loses his concentration in doing the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles. Is that the machlokas we're talking about over here? Absolutely not. That's not what we're talking about. In such a scenario, everyone would say that person had kavana the entire time. They were very aware of what they were doing. Very aware of what they were doing. And there was just a half a second where their mind went off. But even when their mind went off, it wasn't that they weren't aware of what they were doing. There's another extreme case. The other extreme case is like what Elon Daniel brought up, which is that, the fellow is, let's say on Hanukkah, again, we use the example of Hanukkah, where, Hanukkah comes, and he doesn't even realize that it's Hanukkah, but it just happens to be that night, the first night of Hanukkah, he has a candlelit dinner. Did that person fulfill his mitzvah lighting Hanukkah candles? Obviously not. So even if you hold mitzvos ein tzrichas kavana, that mitzvos do not require kavana, you for sure would say that person has not fulfilled their mitzvah. So what's the case we're talking about? The case we're talking about, says the Chai Adam, is the case of where is the middle case, where the person, is doing the mitzvah. They know it's Pesach, like that's what the Gemara said, that the person knows it's Pesach, but they're doing it for ulterior motives, okay? The person knows that it's Rosh Hashanah, but they're blowing the shofar for ulterior motives. They're listening to the shofar for ulterior motives. In that scenario where I know that it's Rosh Hashanah, and I know there's a mitzvah to blow shofar, but I'm doing it for a different purpose. In that scenario, have you fulfilled your mitzvah, or have you not fulfilled your mitzvah? That is the machlokas between Rava and Reb Zera. The question becomes, how do we paskin? So the Shulchan Aruch paskins in the Shulchan Aruch in Hilchos Kriya Shemaim, Simin Samach. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that mitzvos tzrichas kavana. We paskin like Rabbi Zera that we require kavana when doing mitzvos, meaning that you cannot do a mitzvah for ulterior motives. That is the way that the Shulchan Aruch paskins. That's the way most poskim assume. The major discussion with regard to mitzvos tzrichas kavana or ein tzrichas kavana is surrounding around the Rambam, because the Rambam seems to contradict himself. The Rambam, with regard to blowing shofar, says the following: Hamis asik b'tkiya shofar. Let's say someone is blowing shofar lihislamed for ulterior motives, either because he's practicing or to teach someone else how to blow shofar, to play music, whatever it is, doing it for ulterior motives, lo yatsa yedei chavaso, has not fulfilled his obligation of blowing shofar. V'chein hashomea min hamisasek, or if I listen to such a person during, while they're blowing shofar, just, to practice or something like that, lo yatsa, I have not fulfilled my obligation of listening to the shofar in Rosh Hashanah. Niskaven hashomea. Now, let's say I have kavanah. I'm listening to the Baal Tokeya practice, and I want to be able to fulfill my mitzvah through listening to him practice. Okay? Niskaven hashomea latzesi de chavaso v'lo niskaven tokeya, but he is practicing. He's blowing the shofar only for practice. Or let's say the person is blowing shofar with complete kavanah, but me, the listener, does not have kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah, but simply is listening because I find the musical instrument shofar to be quite intriguing, and therefore I'm listening to the shofar, but I don't have kavanah to fulfill my mitzvah. Lo yata yedei chovaso. You have not fulfilled your obligation. Ad sheyiskaven shomea umashmiya, until both you, the one listening, and the one who is blowing the shofar, have kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah. So basically, what's the Rambam paskening over here? He's paskening mitzvos tzurichos kavanah. He's paskening like Reb Zera, right? Rava said tokeya l'shir. Remember, that's what Rava said, black on white. Rava said that if someone is Amar Rava, Zos Omeris, this comes to teach Hatokeya Lashir, someone who blows just for practice or to play music. Yatsa, you fulfill your obligation. The Rambam is not paskening that way. The Rambam is paskening like Rabbi Zera, that you both need to have kavanah. Both you, the listener, and the one blowing need to have kavanah. Okay, so the Rambam seems to be paskening just like the Shulchan Aruch paskens, like Rabbi Zera, that mitzvos require kavanah. Then the Rambam in Hilchos Chametzu Matzah, Perek Vav Halacha Gimel. Yeah, Gavin? Not Gavin. Rabbeinu Tam. Oh, Geshmak. You always ask the best kashas, yeah?
Why does the blower need kavanah if the mitzvah is to listen?
Oh, very good, because the Gemara says that I have an obligation. You're right, that the mitzvah is to listen to the shofar. Very good. However, I can't just play, let's say the wind were to blow the sound of the shofar. Let's say the wind were to blow through the shofar and it would create the sound of the shofar. Right? Like the Gemara talks about Tokeya betoch habor, someone blows inside of a pit and it echoes the sound of the shofar. Right? In those scenarios, even though I'm technically listening to the shofar, but I'm listening to the shofar through a different source. In order for me to fulfill my obligation of tekiya shofar, which is through listening to the shofar, but it needs to be through a kosher tekiya. The tekiya is significant. It's not, you're right. The ikar mitzvah is the shomea, is listening to the shofar, but the shemiya needs to be listening to a proper blowing of the shofar, which needs to have kavanah latzis mitzvah. That's what the Gemara seems to tell me, right? So the Rambam, though, seems to contradict himself, where the Rambam just told me with regards to shofar that mitzvos require kavanah. But now the Rambam tells me in Hilchos Chametzu Matzah, in the laws of Pesach, he says, Achol matzah below kavanah. Let's say someone eats matzah without kavanah to fulfill the mitzvah, kigon, and he gives the example the Gemara gives. She'ansu akum olistim le'echol, that someone force feeds me matzah. In such a scenario, yatsa, I fulfill my obligation. Yatsa yedei chavasa. So hold on one second. On the one hand, the Rambam paskins tokeya l'shir, someone who blows the shofar lehislamed for ulterior motives to practice. Such a person has not fulfilled their mitzvah. Why? Because it seems like mitzvah tzrichas kavanah. On the other hand, he says that with regard to matzah, if someone force feeds me matzah, I did fulfill my mitzvah, meaning mitzvos and tzrichas kavanah. They do not require kavanah. So which one is it? That's stira b'Rambam. We have a contradiction in the Rambam. So does the Rambam assume that mitzvos require kavanah or they don't require kavanah? This is the major question that everyone deals with on the Rambam. So let's suggest 4 different answers to understand the Rambam. These answers I heard from my Rebbe, Rabbi David Hirschlita. The 4 answers to understand the Rambam with regard to mitzvos tzrichas kavana or ein tzrichas kavana. Again, in Hilchos Shofar, he seems to say that mitzvos require kavana, which is why he says that if you're practicing shofar, you have not fulfilled your mitzvah. But with regard to eating matzah on Pesach, if someone force feeds you, you have fulfilled your mitzvah, seemingly saying that mitzvos do not require kavana. How do we paskin? So the first answer comes from the Kesef Mishnah. The Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam over here in Hilchos Shofar, the Perek Beis Halacha Dalid, the Kesef Mishnah written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, wrote it as a way to expand the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, where the Rambam writes in the introduction to his work that he's going to tell us everything we need to know. All Jewish law, all of the oral tradition, he's going to bring down everything in a concise, codified, structured way in the Mishnah Torah. And so really all we'll need is a Tanakh and his book, the Mishnah Torah. But we've found that to not be true because the Rambam essentially took away the whole necessity for delving into the Torah because he's just telling us what to do. But his conclusion might not be the only conclusion. So what the Kesef Mishnah does is that he reopens the Rambam to show you what the sources of the Rambam are and how the Rambam got to his conclusion. So this is a question that the Kesef Mishnah deals with. How do we understand this stira, this contradiction in the Rambam? Does the Rambam assume mitzvahs tzrichas kavana or ein tzrichas kavana? So the Kesef Mishnah gives an answer based on the Ran. The Ran tells us that, the Gemara tells us, Gemara Niddah and Gemara in a few places tells us that misasik bechalavim ve'arayos chayev shechenena. That there's a concept called misasik, where basically, let's say I do an avera through happenstance. Okay, it kind of just happens. Okay, I didn't intend for it to happen. It kind of just happened. Not shogeg. Shogeg means that I knew exactly what I was doing, but I did not realize it was problematic. Misasek means that I didn't even realize I was doing the action itself. For example, the Gemara talks about, let's say I see a rose lying on the ground outside. I see a flower lying outside, okay? I go to pick up the flower, and I don't realize the flower was still attached to the ground. So it's not that I did something knowingly and then I didn't realize it was problematic. I didn't even realize I was going to end up pulling out the flower from the ground on Shas. I thought it was already detached, right? It ended up being attached. That's a misasik. Totally not an issue at all, okay? That in the realm of Averos, there's a general concept called misasik that if it happens in that kind of a happenstance way, I'm off the hook. There are 2 exceptions, though. The 2 exceptions are chalavim and arayos, where when it comes to food and also inappropriate relationships, that if I live with someone I'm not supposed to live with, you can't use the excuse of, it happened in happenstance. Why? Because I still got hana, I got benefit from the avera. And the same would go for foods I'm not allowed to eat. Let's say I go to the kosher eatery and I order a hamburger. They go to the back to get my kosher hamburger. They realize they ran out of hamburgers. They don't want to disappoint a customer. So they run out the back of the store across the street to a Carl's Jr., get me a number 3, bring it back to their kitchen, rewrap it in kosher wrapping. If the mashgiach found out about this, for sure they'd lose their hashgacha. That's not what I'm talking about. But they rewrap it up in the kosher wrapping. They give it to me. I eat it without even realizing that I just ate treif. Have I done an avera? Yes, because I got enjoyment. I got a geschmack from the treif. So chayev shechenena, because I got enjoyment from it, because it satiated me in some way, I have fulfilled I have violated this prohibition. The Ran extends this not just to averos, but also to mitzvos, where if there is a mitzvah that gives me physical benefit, I'm talking about purely spiritual benefit, I'm talking about physical benefit. If the mitzvah gives me physical benefit, even if I'm misasik, even if I do the mitzvah in a happenstance type of way, meaning with completely no kavanah at all, none whatsoever, but since it has a physical effect on me, I have fulfilled my obligation. So the Ran extends this idea not just to Averos, but extends it even to mitzvos, that I could be misasik by certain mitzvos and fulfill my obligation because shechein neheneh. Says the Kesef Mishnah that this is how we understand the Rambam, that the Rambam, with regard to Tekiah Shofar, says that I need to have kavanah. Why? Because there, it's not having a physical effect on my body. Now, one could say, oh, you know what? The shofar does have an effect on me because I enjoy listening to it. But the Gemara that talking about Misasik with regard to Averos is talking about two categories, either food or relations. So here, by shofar is not food. So therefore, by listening to it in that misasek type of a way, you can't say that I fulfilled my obligation. Of course, I need to have kavanah. However, with regard to matzah, being that it has a physical effect on me, therefore, even though I was misasek, I fulfilled my mitzvah. So really, the Rambam assumes mitzvos require kavanah, but the exception is matzah because matzah has a physical effect on me. Yeah, Rabbeinu Tam.
We're assuming. So we're assuming matzah actually has a benefit.
Not just for the jokes. Yeah.
Okay.
So there has to be more averas that, like, you get that aren't allowed even without kavanah. Like, you still sinned.
I thought like if you pick up, like let's say you bend over to pick a piece of fruit that you think is detached on the ground on Shabbos. I thought you still have to bring a korban, no? You didn't realize it was
No. If you think it's detached, no, 100% not. That's the case of Misasik. That's exactly what the Gemara says on the Hayim Beis and Shabbos. Yeah.
It's not shogeg.
What?
I thought that's a shogeg. It's like an accident.
No, shogeg is that I know exactly what I'm doing, but I don't realize it's problematic.
Okay.
Right? So I go to pluck the orange off the tree thinking that, what do you mean? I was told that with regard to things for food, that it's not a problem. Right? I was just mistaken. I didn't know. I didn't realize that it's a problem to do that on Shabbos. Right? So I knew what I was doing. But in the scenario where you thought the orange was detached, so in that scenario, you thought you were doing something completely permissible. And not just thought that you were doing something permissible, that there was there wasn't a shadow of doubt in your mind that this thing was completely like kosher, good. Like, and then it happens to be that it was attached. And that's called a misasek. Another example would be like I'm squeezing by someone and I accidentally turn on a light with my elbow. That's misasek. There's no intention at all for something like that.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Go ahead, Jake.
But there's still some mitzvahs that like require you to do something after, like you do an avera without kavanah, like kilayim and like leaving the case off overnight.
Meaning like nosar. Yeah. So what about nosar? That's passive.
I guess he's saying there's a negative mitzvah that has a positive mitzvah to correct it.
Oh, you're talking about lav hanitak la'eseh, where I do an avera, but the way I rectify the avera is by doing a positive commandment.
Yeah.
Right. So why is that connected to this?
Well, you obviously didn't do the avera with kavanah, so like you obviously need to correct it. So it would fit in.
Meaning you knew exactly what you did. Now there's an opportunity to correct it. You knew exactly what you did. Right? Another example of that would be like stealing, right? It's nitan l'tashlumin, right? So I stole from someone, so I have to give it back. That's why I don't get punished for stealing. So you can't say that, meaning I knew exactly what I did. Now I have an opportunity to give it back. Right? It's the same thing with those that's what the lava needs to say was what we're talking about over here. Is that I was completely misasik. I had no clue what I was doing. So in such a scenario, I'm going to be off the hook unless it had a physical effect on me, either through the area of physical enjoyment of relations or through eating, and in such a scenario, that would be treated as an avera. The Ran extends that to mitzvos also, that if it has a physical effect on me, even if I was misasik, I fulfilled my mitzvah, and that's why matzah is going to be the exception. So basically, according to the Kesef Mishnah, the Rambam holds mitzvos tzrichos kavana, mitzvos require kavana. We're going to see that the Kesef Mishnah is the only one who assumes that the Rambam holds mitzvos tzrichos kavana. All the other opinions hold the Rambam holds mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana. Let's give the second answer now. The second answer is based off of Tosos and Mesechta Pesachim Adaf Kuf Tesvav. Tosos over there relates shofar to tefillah. That shofar is a type of prayer. Listening to the shofar is a form of prayer that takes place on Rosh Hashanah. Like we know the famous Rambam. The Rambam says that Afapi Shigzeres Hakasav, even though that Shigzeres Hamelach, even though that it's a requirement, a decree from the king to listen to the shofar, still remez yeshba. Still, there's a hint in the Torah to listening to the shofar. Basically, something to learn from it, how you're supposed to approach it, which is supposed to be hisor yishenim mishenastem, that it's supposed to wake us up from our slumber. And when we listen to the shofar, it's supposed to be a teshuvah. That it's a type of a tefillah, connecting to God when we listen to the shofar. So if you take that approach, that shofar is like tefillah, so tefillah without kavana is meaningless. It's lip service. It's not actual prayer. Prayer needs to have kavana by definition. So that's why the Rambam assumes that when it comes to blowing shofar, if you didn't have kavana, you're not going to fulfill your mitzvah. Why? Because over there, that's tefillah. Tefillah, by definition, davening needs to have kavana. Otherwise, it's meaningless. As opposed to by matzah over there, that is based on the general rule that mitzvahs do not require kavana in general. The exception, though, is tefillah, and shofar fits in tefillah. Third answer, based off of the Talmud Bavli Yonah. The Gemara in Brachos has a discussion about, let's say a scenario would be, I pick up a cup of beer, I think that it's wine, and I start to make the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, and I'm about to say Borei Pri Hagafen, and then I realize that it's beer, and I end off in the correct way. I say Sha'akol niyeh b'dvaro. Have I said the right bracha or not? Have I fulfilled my mitzvah of Birchas Nanin if the beginning of the bracha was wrong, but I ended in the right way? So the Gemara has a discussion about it. The Talmud Bavli Yonah asked a question on the Gemara, basically saying, why should it matter whether or not you go based on the beginning of the bracha or the end of the bracha? If you hold mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana, basically if you hold like Rabbi, it's a non-question because it doesn't matter. Even though you said the bracha in the wrong way, meaning you started the bracha with the wrong kavana, as long as you ended the right way, who cares that you had the wrong kavana? Mitzvah ein tzrichos kavana. So the Talmud Bavli Yonah says that the exception to that rule, meaning even Rav Rava would agree that mitzvahs require kavana if the mitzvah is amira, is through speech. That if the mitzvah is through speech, in such a scenario, you would require kavana. So basically, according to the Talmud Bavli Yonah, one could extend not just speech, but anything that requires machshava would require kavana. So therefore, tekiah shofar, which engenders machshava, would require kavana, as opposed to eating matzah, which is a physical action that would not necessarily require kavana. So the basic rule of thumb is that the Rambam, again, we're assuming holds mitzvos ein tzrichos kavana. The fourth answer is based off of the Ritva, where the Ritva says that any mitzvah that engenders ritui, ritui means a unique relationship with God. And he gives a number of examples of ritui. Ritui would be karbanos, tefillah, sitting in a sukkah, shaking lulav. These types of mitzvos are mitzvos that require kavana. On the list is blowing shofar. Blowing shofar engenders ritzui and therefore requires kavana. So again, we see that the only exception to the rule of mitzvos ein tzrichas kavana. The only mitzvah that really requires kavana are mitzvahs like tefillah, mitzvahs that engender ritzui, like blowing shofar, and that's why the Rambam says mitzvahs. That's why the Rambam says tokei lashir. If someone's blowing just for practice, you're not going to be able to fulfill your mitzvah of shofar because it requires that ritzui, that special connection with God, which needs a kavana associated with it, as opposed to eating matzah, which is a physical action, and just like any other mitzvah, that does not require kavana according to the Rambam. So basically, everyone, the other answers we gave assume that the Rambam holds mitzvahs ein sheiches kavana, and we showed why shofar would be different, requiring kavana, as opposed to the Kesef Mishnah, which says no. Really, the rule is that mitzvahs tzrichos kavana, which is, by the way, in line where Rabbi Yosef Karo himself paskins in Shulchan Aruch that mitzvahs tzrichos kavana, that we require kavana, which is how we paskin. And that the Rambam's only exception would be matzah because chayiv shechenena, because it had physical enjoyment. I want to end, as we always do, with a famous Aggadah in the Mesechta. One of the most famous Aggadahs in Mesechta's Rosh Hashanah, which, as you could imagine, has a number of very important Aggadahs. As you know, the Mesechta is about the Yom Hadin, the Day of Judgment, one of the most important days of the year that we have a coronation ceremony of reestablishing our relationship with Hashem as Him being the Melech, as Him being the King, and us His servants. But the Gemara deals with, which is really a Halachic issue, but in that Halachic issue is a tremendous ethical teaching, where which the Gemara discusses why it is that we don't say Hallel on Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Avo said, Amru Malachi Hasharis Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Malachi Hasharis said to God, the ministering angel said to God, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, Epnei Ma Ein Yisrael Omrim Shira Lifanecha B'Rosh Hashanah B'Yom Kippurim. Why is it that the Jewish people do not say Hallel on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Amalahem, God says back to them, Afshar Melech Yoshev Al Kisei Din. How could it be that the Melech is sitting on the throne of judgment? The Sifrei Chaim, the Sifrei Mesim, Pesuchim Lefanav, and the books of life and the books of death are open in front of him. The Yisrael Omrim Shira, and the Jewish people are singing songs that they are joyous. That it's a very serious moment. This is not the time to say Hallel. The Sifrei Chaim, the books of life and the books of death are open in front of the Melech, Malchi Amlachim, the King of the universe. Not a time to say Shira. So Rav Drillman Zatzal was the Baal Tokeya. He was the one who blew shofar in Yeshiva University for many years. He was one of the Rebbeim in YU. He passed away not too long ago, I think in just the 90s. But just before a blowing shofar one year, he gave a very fiery drasha, highlighting a few issues with this Gemara. Number one is the Gemara says, that the reason we don't say Hallel is because Sifrei Chaim, the Sifrei Mesim, Pesuchim Lefanav, that the books of life and the books of death are open before God. Number one, it sounds like God is keeping two sets of books. That there's the Sifrei Chaim and the Sifrei Mesim. Hold on one second. It should either be, it's all one book, right? God doesn't need to have two separate books. It's not even a book, right? It's God is just keeping track of who lives and who dies. It's not, there's a Sefer Chaim and a Sefer Mason. But the second question is that, what does it mean by Sifrei Chaim? The books of life and the books of death. There's more than one, even if you want to say, okay, fine, we'll envision them as two separate books. There's the book of life and the book of death. But it says Sifrei Chaim, the books of life, which sounds like there's more than one book of life, and Sifrei Mason, which sounds like there's more than one book of death. So what's going on? So Rav Jovan explained that what the Gemara is trying to teach us, and what God is telling the angels, is that now is not the time to say Shira, but now is the time to look at the Sifrei Chaim and the Sifrei Mason, the books of those that are living and the books of those that have passed on. We each write our own book while we're alive, and even as we pass away from the world. We do things. We create legacies for ourselves. We grow up and we make decisions. We have to choose between right and wrong all the time. We do mitzvos and we do averos. and we build people up or we break people down. We, throughout our lives, are writing our own books. And we're also writing the books after we leave this world. What did we leave behind in this world? What continues to be written about us? There's the Sifrei Chaim and the Sifrei Mesim. On Rosh Hashanah, that is the time during the Yom Hadin where we're supposed to be looking at the Sifrei Chaim and the Sifrei Mesim. Look around to the people around us. Look how other people act. How can we learn from their ways? What are the Sifrei Chaim telling us to do? What are the people around us who give of themselves to benefit the community? They give of themselves to learn Torah. They give themselves to educate, as educators. They give themselves to do chesed. What are the Sifrei Chaim telling me to do? And what are the Sifrei Mesim telling me to do? When I look at people that have passed away, what are things I can learn about them and apply them to my life during this fresh start on Rosh Hashanah? That's why we don't say Hal on Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is not the day for singing songs. Rosh Hashanah is the day for refocusing on my own actions. What are the Sifrei Chaim telling me? What are the Sifrei Mesim telling me? I mean, we don't have to go to the Sifrei Mesim to be able to learn what's the right thing to do. You look around at the world now, you'll see a lot of negative things when you open up the news. But you know what? There's also a lot of really positive things going on. And there's a lot for each and every one of us to learn from. And our job is to be able to look not just on Rosh Hashanah, but this is something we have to be doing all the time. Look to see how we can glean inspiration from those around us to grow, to better ourselves, to push ourselves in our nekudas of bechira, push ourselves in that threshold to be able to grow to greater heights. And through that, we'll be able to build ourselves to a place that we can write our own Sifrei Chaim to be beautiful biographies, beautiful works of art that are going to inspire others, even when they become Sifrei Mesim. All right, we'll stop over here. If you have questions, I'll hang around for a couple extra minutes.
Yes, questions.